Hello, I'm Teresa, and I never thought I'd have to tell this story. I was just an ordinary person living my daily routine, working hard, and taking care of my family until everything changed on October 3rd, 2023. That day was the moment I truly lost my life. For a few minutes I was no longer among the living, and in that emptiness I saw something beyond our world, a vision that still shakes me deeply today. I met Jesus, and what he revealed to me about the spiritual deceptions that fill our world, especially about racism, left me speechless. I have to tell you this because the truth waits for no one. That October morning started like any other day. I woke up early, stretched, and thanked God for another day. The sun peeked through my window, filling my room with a soft, golden light, making it feel like a normal Tuesday. I put on my dark blue work uniform and headed to the kitchen, where the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. My routine was simple: coffee, breakfast, and then out the door to work at the nursing home where I cared for the elderly. I always loved caring for the elderly. Their wisdom, their stories, and their unique perspective on life meant so much to me. That morning, my schedule was full. I visited with Mrs. Johnson, who always had a new story from her younger days, and Mr. Ray, whose gentle humming of classic gospel hymns brought comfort. It was a calm, ordinary day, and I had no idea that in just a few short hours, my life would change forever. By evening, I was exhausted. My shift was over, and I was looking forward to going home. Earlier, my son had called and asked if I could pick up some of his favorite cornbread. So I made a quick stop at the bakery, grabbed the bread, and started my drive home. It had started to rain lightly, but I wasn't worried. I'd driven in the rain plenty of times. I turned on my favorite gospel station and sang along softly as I drove down the familiar road. Then, out of nowhere, everything changed. One moment I was driving, hands firmly on the wheel, thinking about dinner and a good night's rest. The next, blinding headlights exploded in front of me. A truck, skidding on the wet road, was coming straight at me at full speed. My heart pounded as I instinctively tried to swerve, but it was too late. The impact was brutal. Metal crumpled, glass shattered, and a deafening crash filled my ears. I felt my body jerk forward, the seatbelt biting into my chest, and then everything went dark. I don't remember any pain. I don't remember screaming, just an overwhelming emptiness and silence. There was no pain, no panic, just a vast emptiness. Strangely, I wasn't scared. I soon realized I wasn't in my car anymore. I discovered I wasn't in my body at all. Looking down, I saw myself lying lifeless amidst the wreckage, a shattered windshield, raindrops moving in slow motion, and the flashing red and blue lights of the arriving ambulance. The strangest thing was that I felt almost weightless, floating, not in an earthly sense, with no gravity or direction. I simply existed, watching as the paramedics rushed to help me. I watched their anxious faces and frantic movements as they worked to free me from the twisted metal. A young paramedic with dark hair and worried eyes shouted, "Teresa, can you hear me?" I wanted to answer, but my voice was gone. It felt like my voice wasn't mine anymore. I tried to move, but I couldn't control anything. I was totally separate from my body. As I floated above the chaos, I noticed something amazing. Everything looked sharper and brighter. Details I'd never seen before stood out. Raindrops sparkled like tiny diamonds. The grass swayed in the gentle breeze, and there was a soft, vital glow all around. Then I saw my mother, who had died 5 years earlier, standing near the ambulance, quietly watching everything with a peaceful look on her face. Her loving eyes told me everything. I was dead. This realization, which should have terrified me, instead filled me with a deep and unexpected calm. I felt like I was outside of time, fear, stress, and all my earthly worries just vanished. That's when I noticed the light. It wasn't like the harsh beams from the truck or the flashing lights of the ambulance. This light was alive. It radiated from everywhere and nowhere, warm and inviting, like a long-lost friend, calling me forward. I felt an irresistible pull towards it. As I got closer, an immense love filled every part of me. It was like returning to the arms of someone who had known me forever, patiently waiting for me to come back. Then I heard a voice. "Teresa, come." In that moment, I knew who it was. Jesus. Hearing his voice changed everything. I wasn't just drifting anymore. I was being steadily drawn towards the light. There was no fear or resistance, only the comfort of coming home after years of being lost. The warmth, the love, the overwhelming peace. Nothing on earth could compare. As I drew closer, I felt a purity surround me, as if every burden, mistake, and regret was gently lifted away. The light wasn't just bright, it pulsed with life. It wasn't just around me, it filled me from within. Even before I saw him, I knew who was waiting for me. Jesus. I didn't need introductions or proof. Deep in my soul, I recognized him instantly. His presence was so powerful, I could barely take it in. It was like standing before the sun, but instead of burning, his light healed every part of me, filling gaps I never knew existed. I fell to my knees, if I even had knees in this form, as a natural gesture of reverence, not out of fear, but out of deep love, wonder, and respect for his divine power. Then he spoke again. "Teresa, rise." I obeyed, and for the first time I clearly saw his face. How can I describe it? His beauty was beyond words. His eyes held the depths of eternity, making me feel like a child gazing at an endless sky. He radiated a love so vast and deep that it completed me, and yet there was also a trace of sorrow in his gaze. I couldn't understand why Jesus, the King of Kings and Prince of Peace, carried such sorrow. But before I could ask, he reached out his hand. When his fingers brushed against mine, I was overwhelmed with a deep understanding. I saw everything, not just the world as it appears, but how he truly sees it. I saw the pain, the deception, and the unseen forces manipulating people, pulling them apart. I saw a battle fought not with weapons, but a spiritual war raging across the world, a war most people are unaware of. Tears filled my eyes. "Lord, what is happening?" I whispered. Jesus looked at me with deep sadness, but his voice remained steady. "Come, Teresa." Before I could fully understand, everything changed. A tunnel of light opened before me, and suddenly I found myself moving through it effortlessly, neither walking nor flying, but gently carried. The light wasn't just around me, it flowed through me, filling me with an energy and warmth I had never felt before. In the distance, I began to hear music, but it wasn't like any music we know on earth. It was pure, vibrant, alive. Harmonious voices blended together, singing words I couldn't understand, but somehow felt deep within me. Then I noticed something incredible. The walls of the tunnel weren't solid at all. They were filled with moving images. Each image depicted moments from my life, but I wasn't seeing them as I remembered them. I was seeing them through Jesus' eyes. I saw myself as a lonely child on a playground. I had always believed I was just an ordinary child, overlooked by others. Yet in that vision, angels were beside me. Even in my loneliest moments, I was never truly alone. I saw forgotten memories, moments when I offered a kind word to a stranger, moments when I forgave someone who hurt me, moments when I prayed silently for those who didn't even know it. Every act, every choice echoed in eternity. Tears streamed down my face, as I realized the impact of every decision. Lord, I had no idea, I murmured. Jesus smiled gently, though his expression remained solemn. Every choice matters, Teresa. Every thought, every word, every action counts. Then the tunnel changed again, and suddenly I wasn't looking at my past anymore, but peering into the future. The bright light dimmed, and I found myself standing on what looked like a normal city street. People walked by, caught up in their daily routines, and at first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then I noticed something unsettling. No one was talking to each other. Instead, people moved with their eyes fixed on small, glowing devices implanted beneath their skin. Payments were made without cash or cards, just a simple wave over sensors. Families gathered in restaurants, but instead of conversing, they stared blankly ahead, as if guided by some unseen force. My heart pounded as I looked at Jesus. I whispered, "What is this?" His eyes, filled with sorrow, answered without words, "This is what will happen." Standing there, absorbing the eerie, silent world unfolding around me, I turned to him again. His gaze held a deep sadness mixed with unwavering love. "Teresa, you need to understand what is happening," he said. I longed to ask him countless questions, but before I could speak, our surroundings shifted once more. In an instant, I was no longer in the city. I found myself in a place more tangible than any I had ever experienced. It wasn't heaven, not yet anyway. Yet there was a divine presence you could almost touch. The air was alive, filled with a smell you can't describe, a mix of purity, love, and holiness, all rolled into one. There was no sun, but light filled every corner, shining from a single faraway source. Then he stepped forward. Even though I had already felt his presence, now I saw him completely. Jesus. His clothes were a shining white, unlike any earthly fabric, sparkling like they were woven from light itself. His face was both familiar and impossible to describe. In his swirling eyes were oceans of wisdom, a burning justice, and a love so deep I felt like I could melt into it. I fell to my knees right away, not because I had to, but because my soul recognized him, leaving me no choice but to worship him. Every part of me knew him, not just as my Savior, but as the very reason I existed. His voice was both strong and gentle, full of authority and overflowing with compassion. "Rise, Teresa. I have much to show you." He reached out his hand, and when he touched me, waves of love and truth washed over me. Every fear, every doubt, every hidden hurt laid bare. He saw everything, yet his love stayed strong. "Lord, why have you brought me here?" I finally whispered. He met my gaze with a serious look. "Because the world is under a deception, and you must witness the truth before it's too late." The moment those words left his lips, everything changed again. The light around us shifted, and suddenly we weren't surrounded by the divine presence anymore. Instead, I began to see the world, not as we see it physically, but through spiritual eyes. I saw entire cities covered in a thick, dark fog, a mist invisible to most. This darkness wasn't just a lack of light. It was a living, crawling force wrapping itself around nations, governments, and even churches. "This is the deception, Teresa," Jesus said. I watched in dismay as people went about their lives, scrolling on their phones, working, raising their kids, unaware that something was subtly guiding their thoughts and emotions. Then, my attention turned to a worldwide trend, a technology that was quickly becoming essential. I saw people getting implants, tiny glowing devices inserted under their skin. These weren't ordinary microchips, they were spiritual chains, disguised as convenience. This is how the world is being prepared, Jesus declared solemnly. I saw pastors in their pulpits assuring their congregations that these new technologies were blessings, a gift from God for a better and safer future. Christians embraced them eagerly, convinced it was simply a modern way to connect. Turning to Jesus with a broken heart, I pleaded, "Lord, don't they see?" He shook his head. "No, because they never seek me. They trust the wisdom of the world more than mine." I wanted to yell, to wake them up, to warn them, but I was powerless. This was just a vision, a warning he was revealing to me. "Come, Teresa," he urged. "There is more." At first I couldn't imagine where he was taking me. The vision shifted again, and I observed people of every race and color moving through life burdened by deep, unknown divisions. I saw people of color carrying generational pain, anger, and resentment without knowing the source, and white people weighed down by shame, confusion, and guilt as they struggled to find their place. Then Jesus spoke words that struck me deeply. "See, they are not enemies. They are all my children." I gasped as spiritual truth was revealed. The division between black people and white people wasn't natural. It was orchestrated. I saw dark forces whispering lies to both groups, twisting history, making hurts bigger, and using pain as a weapon. To the black people, the enemy murmured, "You have no worth. You'll always be seen as less. Hold on to your anger and never forgive." To the white people, it hissed, "You carry all the blame. You're condemned from birth, and nothing you do can ever fix the past." And both sides believed the lie. Jesus turned to me, his voice urgent but full of love. "The enemy twists history to keep them blind, but I came to set them free. There are no black people, there are no white people, only my people." Tears streamed down my face as I saw spiritual chains wrapping around minds. It was never really about race, but always about control. In that moment, I understood the sorrow in his eyes. People were so busy fighting each other that they were missing the real battle happening above them. "Teresa, this deception is deep, and many will be lost because of it." I fell to my knees and asked, "Lord, what can we do?" Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. "Tell the truth. Some will listen, some won't. But the truth must be proclaimed." I could barely breathe from the enormity of what I'd seen, the division, the deception, the enemy's twisting. It was overwhelming. My soul trembled as I asked, "Lord, how did we let this happen?" His gaze, filled with deep love and sorrow, broke my spirit as he replied, "Teresa, my people have forgotten who they are." In that instant, clarity pierced through me. The enemy hadn't simply divided people by race or lies. He had stolen their very identities. I saw individuals wandering through life, chasing fleeting affirmations, money, power, or approval, never realizing they were meant for something so much greater. Then, in a sudden flash, I was transported to a vast hall filled with souls, not physical bodies, but radiant beings of light, full of potential and promise. "These are those yet to be born," Jesus explained. "Each one is sent with a purpose, gifted to fulfill their calling. But when they enter this world, the enemy sets his plan in motion, to confuse them, to weaken them, and to distract them so they forget why they were sent." I watched these pure souls arrive on earth, and from the moment of their birth, begin the battle for their identity and destiny. Some grew up in loving homes, where they were cherished and gently guided toward their divine destiny. Others, however, were led astray by broken families, addictions, or deep hurts that made them question their worth. Society, too, played a part in twisting minds, making some believe their value depended solely on their looks, intellect, or accomplishments. The adversary had built an entire network to prevent people from realizing the unique purpose God had placed within them. I looked at Jesus, my heart aching, and asked, "Lord, how can we fight this? How can we open their eyes?" He took my hands and replied, "Tell them who they truly are. Tell them why they were created, and most importantly, remind them that I have not forgotten them." Then he revealed something that ignited hope within me. Amidst all the deception, I saw sparks of light emerging from some souls, people who had discovered their purpose and refused to be ruled by the enemy's falsehoods. They were everyday people. Teachers, mothers, fathers, laborers, students, pastors, and leaders all carried a radiance that repelled the surrounding darkness. "These are my warriors," Jesus declared. "They don't need swords or conventional weapons. Their power lies in the truth." The more they spoke honestly, the more the invisible chains around others fell away. The enemy could never defeat them, because truth is more powerful than any lie. I looked at Jesus, my soul burning with urgency. "I have to go back, don't I?" asked. He nodded. "Yes, Teresa, but first, there's one last vision I must share with you." The moment he spoke those words, our surroundings shifted once more. Though the comforting warmth of his presence remained, what I saw next shook me to my core. I found myself in a sprawling metropolis, larger than any I had ever known, yet something felt off. The architecture was sleek and modern, with bright screens everywhere. The streets were oddly quiet, despite thousands of people moving in unison. There were no cars, only pedestrians walking in perfect order, their faces blank, eyes fixed on unseen data streaming before them. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. "Lord, what is this?" His face was filled with sorrow as he replied, "This is the future of the world if they do not wake up." I watched in disbelief as people carried out their routines like robots. They worked, they ate, they shopped, but something essential was missing. No laughter echoed, no tears fell, no one dared to question. Then my eyes were drawn upwards, toward the source of control hovering over the city. A giant hologram of a charismatic leader dominated the towering screens. He was eloquent, and the people revered him with admiration and devotion. "This is who the world will follow," Jesus said, "the one they will trust. Yet they will not notice the chains that bind them until it is too late." I watched governments preach unity, security, and peace, but behind their polished words lurked something sinister. People were willingly giving up their freedoms, convinced they were making the world a better place. Then I saw something that made my heart sink. Huge lines of people stepping forward to receive something. At first I couldn't tell what it was, but as I got closer, my heart clenched. They were receiving an upgrade, a small implant placed just beneath the skin. I turned to Jesus, shocked. "Lord, is this the mark?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But this is the path they will be led down, step by deceptive step. First, they will be told it is convenient. Then, they will be persuaded it is necessary. And finally, it will be mandated." Tears filled my eyes. I wanted to scream, to warn them, to beg them to stop, but they were too entranced, too deceived, too eager to trust the system. In despair, I asked, "Lord, how can we stop this?" His voice, a mixture of sorrow and hope, replied, "Some will listen, some will not. But those who recognize my voice will not be deceived. You must speak to them. Warn them before it is too late." With those words, everything shifted again. Suddenly, I found myself in an open field. The city and its towering screens were gone, leaving only a profound silence. Jesus stood beside me, gazing at the horizon. I could feel the weight of what he had revealed pressing down on my soul. "Teresa," he said, "the world has forgotten the power of choice. They see themselves as mere victims of circumstance. But I have granted them free will, the greatest gift of all. Yet so many choose the path of destruction. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. But, Lord, they don't know. They can't see. How can they choose when they are unaware of the deception? Jesus replied gently but firmly, "That is why my people must speak, for the truth must ring louder than the lie." At that moment I saw two roads. One was wide, smooth and inviting. People walked down it without hesitation. But as they walked, I saw darkness close in around them, unaware they were being led to ruin. The other road was narrow and difficult, full of obstacles and challenges. But at the end, there was a bright light, and Jesus was there, arms open. Most will choose the easy road, Teresa. It's comfortable, safe, and doesn't ask for sacrifice. But those who seek me, who truly trust in me, will choose the harder road, and I will guide them home. I trembled as I asked, "What should I do? How can I help them see?" He placed his hand on my shoulder, and I felt his love wash over me. "Tell them the truth, Teresa. Some will turn away. Some will laugh at you. But those who are mine will hear my voice. And when the time comes, they will know which way to go." In the blink of an eye, I was no longer in that vision. I was back in Jesus' presence, the weight of everything I had seen still heavy on my soul. Yet now, I also felt hope. Jesus looked at me intently and said, "There are those who are already awake, Teresa. The enemy cannot deceive them, for they recognize my voice. They are the ones I have chosen to stand firm." In these last days, I have seen islands of light scattered across the globe, people who refuse to conform, who cling to me despite the deception around them. I have seen them pray, worship, encourage one another, and warn those who are willing to listen. I have seen that they are not afraid. Even as the darkness advances, they stand firm. These, my warriors, are not armed with swords of Ireland, but with truth. And when the world turns against them, I will be their shield. Tears welled up in my eyes as I thought not only of the suffering and deception, but also of the strength of those who stood with Jesus. They were not powerful by worldly standards. Many were simple, ordinary people. Mothers, fathers, workers, students, yet in the spiritual realm, they shone like stars. Jesus fixed his gaze on me, full of purpose, and said, "Go back, Teresa. Tell them what you have seen. Those who are mine will listen." I felt a pull, like something was drawing me back. I looked at Jesus, my heart breaking. "Lord, I don't want to leave. I want to stay with you." He smiled gently, though his eyes were serious. "Your time is not yet over. There are many who need to hear this, Teresa. They must know the truth before it's too late." The force pulling me grew stronger, and suddenly I felt myself being drawn away from the light. Everything went dark. I felt my body again, the aching in my limbs, the beeping of machines. Then I gasped for breath. I was back in the hospital. I opened my eyes and saw my family gathered around me, their faces etched with shock. I was alive, and I knew without a doubt that I had to share what Jesus had shown me. The first breath in my recovered body felt strange, like being confined in something too small, too limiting. The weight of flesh, the throbbing of limbs, the steady beep of hospital machinery. It was all overwhelming. I saw the faces of my loved ones leaning over me, tears streaming down their cheeks in a mixture of shock and relief. My sister gripped my hand, whispering my name over and over as if the repetition could anchor me here. The doctors had warned they might lose me. My injuries were severe. But God had other plans. Back in my normal life, memories of what I'd seen flooded my mind. The futuristic city, the deception everywhere, the enemy's control over humanity. It was all etched into my soul. Looking into the eyes of my loved ones, I realized something disturbing. They were clueless. They were living their lives, unaware of the spiritual war raging above them. Tears filled my eyes. "I have to tell them," I whispered. My sister came closer, asking, "Tell us what?" I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My body was weak, but inside me burned an unstoppable urgency. Jesus sent me back for a reason. I couldn't keep this to myself. I closed my eyes and prayed, "Lord, give me the strength to share what you've shown me." The steady beeping of the machines reminded me that I had been given a second chance, not for my sake, but for theirs. In the days that followed, I struggled to explain what had happened, but most people doubted me. My sister thought I was confused because of the accident. My pastor advised caution, saying that near-death experiences are profound, but they shouldn't scare people. Even some of my closest friends dismissed it all as just a dream. I felt isolated, burdened by a truth too heavy to bear alone. Yet deep down, I knew that silence wasn't an option. Jesus had warned me that not everyone would listen. Then I started to notice something unsettling. The visions I'd had were starting to come true in real life. The news was talking about implantable technology for transactions, digital ID systems replacing traditional banking, and even churches embracing AI and technology, convinced it was just progress. I knew time was running out, so I started talking to anyone who would listen. Some dismissed me, but others felt the same way. They had observed the changes, sensed the shift in the world, yet didn't have the words to describe it until I spoke. In that moment I realized I wasn't alone. God was already touching hearts. I was simply his messenger. The hardest part was seeing my loved ones choose to ignore the truth, while the deception grew stronger every day. But I knew I had done my part. I had told the truth, just as Jesus had commanded me. Some will listen, others won't. If you've read this far, know that it was meant for you to hear it. This isn't just my story, it's a warning. Jesus didn't show me these things to scare me, but so I could warn you. The world is changing, and the deception is already at work. The enemy won't come with obvious chains and brute force. He'll come cloaked in convenience and comfort. At first it might seem harmless, even logical. Then it will become necessary, and eventually it will be enforced. I implore you, stay vigilant. Pray for discernment. Strengthen your faith now, before it's too late. Jesus showed me that his people will be protected. No matter how dark the world becomes, his light will always shine brighter. But you must be willing to see the truth, to choose him even when it's hard. Even if the world calls you crazy, even if it means taking the harder road, because ultimately, the only thing that matters is your soul. And Jesus, he has already won the battle. Now the choice is yours. Will you listen, or will you wait until it's too late? I've done my part. Now the choice is yours.